of Power, live from Washington, D.C.
From Bloomberg's Washington, D.C. studios to our TV and radio audiences worldwide, welcome to a special edition of Balance of Power, live from Capitol Hill. I'm Joe Matthew on Capitol Hill alongside Tyler Kendall, joining us from our D.C. studio tonight, dueling narratives with just hours before a government shutdown.
We're on duty. They're on vacation. They're on vacation because they'd rather shut the government down than protect the health care of the American people. That's unfathomable. That's unacceptable.
Nothing is inevitable, but I would say it's probably likely because they want to give health care to illegal immigrants, which will destroy health care for everybody else in our country.
No deal in sight to keep the government open for the short or the long term. The clock is ticking down. We'll have arguments from both sides of the aisle as Democrats dig in their heels, saying the fight over health care is now, while Republicans put forward a bill to keep the lights on until mid-November.
It's up to the Senate Democrats. That's where we are. And if they decide to vote it down tonight, they're going to be the ones that have to explain at midnight tonight why the government shut down.
Set to join us tonight, Democratic Senator Chris Coons, Republican Senators Roger Marshall and Erik Schmitt, plus House Appropriations Chair Tom Cole, with just under 7 hours to go before a shutdown. We've got every angle covered for you tonight with, of course, Joe Matthew co-anchoring from Capitol Hill, Bloomberg's Jennifer Dlouhy from the White House, and our signature political panel, Archie Siddiqui and Lisa Camuso-Miller, here with me on set. To kick us off, though, we go first over to Joe on Capitol Hill. Hey, Joe.
Hey, Tyler, thank you. Joining us now on Capitol Hill as we count down here, Bloomberg's Erik Wasson, who's been knee-deep in this story now for weeks. Erik, we start with the simple questions this evening. Is it a sure thing the government shuts down after midnight?
Well, nothing's a sure thing in life, but my money's on a government shutdown. I just don't see any off-ramp right here. Senate Democrats and Republicans are dug in their positions. Democrats continuing at this hour to insist on large health care policy changes being attached to any stopgap spending bill. Republicans saying we can negotiate things like Obamacare premium subsidies, but after the government's fully funded. John Thune telling us release the hostage. So I just don't see a real off-ramp now. It could be a short shutdown. You know, a shutdown doesn't start right at midnight. There could be some overnight activity to maybe do a 1 week, stopgap bill, which we've seen in the past. But, as of right now, it looks like we're heading to a shutdown, and the Office of Management Budget will be issuing a memo tomorrow to shut down most of the activities of the government.
So it's not, in fact, 1201, but when that statement is out, that we'll know we're shut down.
We will, and, this is going to be different from past shutdowns because the president is out there saying they're going to look to do mass firings of federal workers. There's some legal questions surrounding the ability to do that. It hasn't been done before, but we could see, a large number of people added to the rolls of the unemployed after the shutdown's over.
All right, Erik, thank you so much, as always, for your great reporting. Bloomberg's Erik Wasson, we thank you. Tyler?
Well, within the last hour, the president responded to the dueling narratives over the impending shutdown. Here's part of what he had to say.
We're doing well as a country, so the last thing we want to do is shut it down. But a lot of good can come down from shutdowns. We can get rid of a lot of things that we didn't want, and they'd be Democrat things, but they want open borders. They want men playing in women's sports. They want transgender for everybody. They never stop. They don't learn. We won an election in a landslide. They just don't learn. So we have no choice. I have to do that for the country.
Let's turn now to Bloomberg's Jennifer Dlouhy at the White House for a look at how President Trump is positioning his administration for a shutdown. Jen, it's good to see you, and thanks for being here. Can you just walk us through the developments from the administration today as we now tick down to this deadline later tonight?
Right. I mean, what we're seeing really is that the White House is holding firm in kind of this insistence that, that they have the upper hand and that Democrats are holding Americans and the government hostage with their insistence on extending these healthcare tax subsidies and reversing some Medicaid cuts that were part of the Trump's, big, beautiful bill passed earlier this year. We've heard Trump repeatedly and other administration officials today double down on what is a threat essentially to fire government workers and to cut government programs permanently instead of simply, furloughing government workers temporarily, a fate that, potentially awaits 750,000 of them. Russell Vought, the OMB director, just earlier today was insisting he does have this authority to go further than just furloughs and actually demand reductions in force across the government. We have seen, of course, some pushback on that idea. And in fact, worker unions today have gone to federal court to kind of preempt this move to try to challenge any kind of permanent firings before they could happen. But we'll stay tuned and we'll see what happens in the next few hours.
All right, Bloomberg's Jennifer Dlouhy following all of the updates for us from the White House. Thank you so much. Now let's turn back to Capitol Hill, where Joe Matthew is standing by with a special guest. Hey, Joe.
Yeah, Tyler, thank you. We're going to be bringing you voices from both sides of the aisle over the next hour. Joining us now, live from Capitol Hill, Republican Congressman Tom Cole of Oklahoma, who chairs the Appropriations Committee. And what a great place to start this evening. Mr. Chairman, welcome. It's great to have you
Thanks for
on
having
Bloomberg.
me.
You've been around here for a minute, and I just wonder, before we get into the policy stuff, are you just shaking your head? We saw this coming months before it happened.
Well, it's disappointing we're here. We've made a lot of progress on appropriations this year. And honestly, both sides of the rotunda. First time Senate's actually passed bills across the floor before September in 7 or 8 years. On our side, all 12 bills are out, 3 across the floor. We're in good negotiations with our Democratic counterparts on a package of 3 bills. But then all this extraneous things related to Medicare and Obamacare premium support from the COVID era, it really doesn't have a lot to do with what we do on our committee, but it's grinding the place to a halt.
Grinding it to a halt, and I suspect that that's inevitable at this point, as we've been discussing. I don't know how you save this between now and 12:01. Are Democrats right, though? They say Republicans never invited us to the table. We never had a negotiation.
That's simply not the truth. Frankly, I've met with my counterparts in the Appropriation Committee. They asked for 2 things. They asked for a clean CR. We gave them a clean CR. And they asked for a limited time frame, which I agree with. The Trump administration actually wanted to go to January.
Yeah, that's right.
Democrats wanted to go into November, and I said, that's great. I mean, I want to keep us moving, and around this place, deadlines are like alarm clocks. Nobody does anything. So a shorter term deadline was good, and it was working well. But look, I think Democrats made up their minds. They wanted to shut down the government to prove that they were fighting President Trump. And frankly, the last time we agreed to a CR of any kind was pretty rough go for Senator Schumer.
Yeah, right.
Not from us, but from the criticism he got from his own side.
A lot of people think the seeds of the shutdown were planted in March. Is that true?
I don't think they were. I mean, we could have had it in March, and it looked like we're going to have it now. But I think it's a mistake on the Democrats' part, because I think at the end of the day, you never achieve the objective in a shutdown you try to achieve. We tried to do this with Obamacare in 2013, didn't work. Democrats, Senator Schumer, tried to do it with DACA in 2017, didn't work. We tried it again, with the wall in 2018-19.
Yeah,
now we're back at this point again, and I don't think it's going to end well for my friends on the other side of the aisle.
Well, you wonder if we're set for another record here, because I don't know what the off-ramp is. Mr. Chairman, are you working in the background on an ACA extension that Democrats will end up getting anyway at the end of the year, or is this going to create
It's really not within the purview of our committee. And so,
well, you're known as a bit of a deal maker.
Well, I'm always happy to try and make a deal. The deal we should be making is on the 3 bills that we had set aside collectively that we thought we could reach an agreement on and sort of ignite a process that would keep moving forward. But I'm not critical of my Democratic counterparts in appropriations. I think this was a Democratic leadership decision by Senator Schumer and by Minority Leader Jeffries, and I think they're going to regret it, quite frankly. And they're gambling with the paychecks of a lot of Americans. They're gambling with the stability of the economy, and they're asking for things, $1.5 trillion worth of spending for a 4-week extension of the current budget. That's not going to happen.
I talked to your colleague Dusty Johnson yesterday, along with Senator Ron Johnson. They're both out with a piece of legislation. I think it's the Eliminate Shutdowns Act. It would trigger a 14-day CR, essentially, anytime there was a lapse in funding. Is that a good idea? It would mean no more shutdowns. It would also mean no more incentive to bargain.
I agree with that, actually. Look, I have a lot of respect for both those legislators. They're excellent legislators. On the other hand, if you give Congress an excuse not to do its work, it won't do its work. So
it's
much
perpetual
better.
CR in that world.
That's what I'm afraid would happen. And frankly, we would have people on both sides of the aisle that want that. And that's not what we ought to be doing. We ought to be real appropriations bills. Again, I compliment Majority Leader Thune. He got 3 across the floor. You got to remember the year before when Senator Schumer was the Majority Leader, he didn't get any across the floor, not a single one. Even though Susan Collins and Patty Murray had gotten 11 bills out of committee, they were ready to go. And Schumer made the decision, because he likes omnibuses, not to put anything on the floor, and we ended up, not getting anything done.
What are the odds come December, you've got a couple of D's and R's in your office, and you're having a conversation about how to fund the government through regular order when the new year
I hope we can do it before December.
Yeah.
Again, I don't think this shutdown will go anywhere near that long. And what I would hope is we return to the process we were on. That is, let's find a group of bills that we can pass. We've got another one that we think would be the next logical candidate, but I would consult with both Rosa DeLauro and obviously Patty Murray and Susan Collins on that. We could move from there into another package. At some point, we're going to have a clear top line. We have one in the House. We're not quite sure what the Senate's is, but we know it's above ours. Yeah. We can bargain that out. But look, we just have to have people that want to make the government work instead of want to shut it down. Right now, almost every Republican in both chambers has voted to keep the government open, or 7-week extension and normal negotiation on appropriations bills. Sadly, almost every single Democrat in the House and Senate have voted to shut down the government. And that's at odds with their historic position. I think they'll regret it.
Interesting. It's not just ACA subsidies, as you know, the Obamacare component. It's the rescissions. The Democrats wanted to promise that there'd be no clawbacks. I'm just curious in general.
First of all,
how does the chairman of appropriations feel about rescissions in principle?
Look, as a rule, I like to vote on everything. Yeah. But the position OMB has is actually the position they've had since Gerald Ford was president. So it's not new for them. And it's actually where the Government Accounting Office, which works for us, had the same position until 2018. So there's a little murky area in the law here. It doesn't really affect that much of the budget. If you look at the total rescissions package, both the first one and the new one that's proposed, they're relatively minor. And in the case of the second one, where I would hope we vote on it, I would personally support it. You're talking $5 billion in a almost $1.7 trillion discretionary budget. It's pretty minor stuff. It's mostly foreign aid related. Secretary Rubio has said this is money I don't need and can't spend. Some of it is money that's left over from before this year. So it's not something that can't be bargained out. I think this is an excuse for a shutdown as opposed to a serious difference of opinion.
Before you leave us, do you take the administration and Russ vote at their word that mass layoffs will follow a shutdown?
I hope not. It depends on where they are. Look, we're a government running a $2 trillion deficit, so looking for savings is a good thing to do. And sometimes they're going to come in areas you'd prefer not to cut, but you probably need to. On the other hand, look, I look at the world through my district. I've got one of the most federal-heavy districts in the country with 16,000 civilian federal workers at Tinker Air Force Base, 6,000 at Portsmouth National Weather Centers in my district. The leading groundwater laboratory is in my district, an EPA facility. Almost nobody in any of those places have gotten let off, and they're not likely to. The reality is they do important work. Somebody's got to keep bombers and tankers flying. Somebody's got to do field artillery, and federal workers are an important component in that.
But if you're a bureaucrat in Washington, look out.
Yeah, I think it's much more dangerous if you're in Virginia, Maryland, or D.C.
Yeah. That's why we'll be watching lawmakers in both of those states. Just lastly, what does Tom Cole do when the government shuts down? Are you hanging around here in case you're needed?
I mean, I was up here. We don't have to be here right now. Honestly, if you're in the House, we've done our work. We've passed our bills out of committee. We've passed a clean CR for 7 weeks. We have to wait on the Senate to do something.
Sure.
But I thought I could probably contribute a little bit to some of the discussion up here. Certainly wanted to be here available to my leadership to answer any appropriations related questions they have. So I'll be here for a while.
Well, I know a lot of the conference is not in town. It means a lot to us to have you here, and we appreciate the conversation, Mr. Chairman.
Again, let's keep it going. To be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for being with us on Bloomberg. Congressman Tom Cole of Oklahoma. Of course, we thank the chairman for being part of our special coverage, and we've got a lot more to go in this special edition of Balance of Power, live from Capitol Hill on the eve, of a government shutdown. With Republican Senators Roger Marshall and Erik Schmitt will be with us later as well. A view from the other side of the aisle with Democratic Senator Chris Coons. It's all ahead on Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio.
Trump admitted himself that he is using Americans as political pawns. He is admitting that he is doing the firing of people if, God forbid, it happens. He's using Americans as pawns, as I said. Democrats do not want a shutdown.
Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer speaking to reporters earlier today. Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle remain deadlocked on any agreement to keep the government open by tonight's deadline. For the latest, let's head back to Joe Matthew, who is live on Capitol Hill.
All right, Tyler, thank you. Joining me now, Republican Senator Roger Marshall of Kansas, a member of the Finance and Budget Committees. And I'll remind our listeners and viewers that he is a physician. Doctor, it's good to see you. Welcome back to Bloomberg TV and radio. Do you find it ironic that we're here tonight, apparently on the eve of a shutdown over Obamacare subsidies? Republicans have made the point that this is a policy matter for December, not a funding issue in September. Yet there are a lot of Republicans who think this needs to be done by the end of the year. How do you look at this right now? Is it a reason to bring us here tonight?
Well, I woke up this morning and I felt like I had a woman in labor. She's stuck at 7 centimeters, and I don't know if she delivered tonight or tomorrow, but I wish I had some Pitocin to give Congress and to get this baby out and to finish the job.
Yeah.
Look, these are extra subsidies. Mm-hmm. These are not the original Obamacare subsidies. These are extra subsidies from Joe Biden. COVID-era subsidies, and we need to debate them. Of course, they cost a lot more than we thought they would, probably $35 billion a year. On the other hand, the cost of insurance is what quadrupled this century. So I totally get the concern there. But I think really keeping the government open tonight is our main job today. Keep the government open, reasonable spending as well. I feel like Chuck Schumer is fighting for his political life. And his base has not realized that they lost the election. If I could, go back to 2020, the Democrats win the House, the Senate, and the White House. They come in, they spend trillions of dollars more than we wanted. And as we went through the next couple of years, I think over a dozen times Republicans voted for a continuing resolution, just like we're doing tonight. And we never once asked them to rescind that package of spending. We would have liked to them do, but we didn't shut the government down over it. Mm-hmm. Now we feel like he's shutting the government down over our one big beautiful bill and these COVID-era expenditures as well.
Well, if there is an effort, and I understand Senator Tuberville, for instance, is part of an effort to draw up some legislation that would at least provide a framework to extend these ACA subsidies. Shouldn't leadership just tell Democrats that, hey, we promise we're going to get to this. Why don't we clean the CR up and we'll go handle this together by the end of the year?
Yeah, and
is that messaging being made?
I assume that some of that is happening. Yeah. I would have thought that Chuck Schumer would have came to the White House this weekend, rather than, starting about a week ago, all of a sudden he's being very dishonest and saying we're not negotiating. Susan Collins and the appropriations team has negotiated till they're blue in the face, and they even had an agreement on what to do with this continuing resolution. So I would have thought Chuck Schumer would have came to the White House yesterday and said, hey, if we fix these COVID-era subsidies, then we got a deal. And you shake hands and we get on with it. And by the way, what we should be talking about is the cost of health care. We should be talking about my transparency bill, a price tags bill that's going to force hospitals to show exactly what it's going to cost. We should be talking about driving prescription drug prices down by reforming PBMs, some of those types of things. Those go after the real root of the problem, but instead we have this drama tonight that's basically going to take all the oxygen out of the room for the next foreseeable future.
Well, it feels like it, and there's a major lack of trust, I guess, if you can't, move forward on a handshake or a promise. Senator, how long should these COVID-era subsidies be in place? If it was up to you, would you sunset this after a year? Would there be an income limit that triggered the implementation? How do you handle it?
So I think it's all the above. There's different dials. The Obamacare subsidies were set for people under 400% of poverty level. Now we're going up to way over 400, 500, 600% poverty level. People making $200,000 a year, a family of four, getting these subsidies. I think we should dial them down over the next 2 to 3 years and give us a chance to fix health care, to drive down the price of health care, which is the true problem.
If we shut down, looks like we're gonna, and you can tell me if we're wrong on that, there's a thought that there's no off-ramp and that President Trump and Russ Vought have a playbook and they're ready to start acting on it, that there will be no motivation to reopen the government. We might set another record. Is that your fear?
Oh, I think that after 3 or 5 days of this, people will come to their senses. People find religion on this? And after they see what the president is doing and he executes some of those, then I think the Democrats find religion again. I think this is a political question for Chuck Schumer, that his base, his far left base, crucified him when he kept the government open in the spring, and he's afraid to do that again. He's afraid that AOC is going to primary him. All those things going on. So to him, it's a political decision. And you and I are talking logic right now.
We try to. The president said earlier today a lot of good could come from a shutdown, and that they are in fact going to start laying people off. What does that look like by the time they're done? Do you take them at their word? Is that posturing?
Yeah, I think that the president is a world champion negotiator, and he's negotiating through the press in many ways. I think you always try to make the best of a bad situation. You try to take lemons and turn it into lemonade. I think that's what he's saying, but I think he's negotiating. Okay,
very well. How about an off-ramp? If we do end up shutting down, you think in 3 to 5 days you've got Chuck Schumer and John Thune coming together? How does it end in terms of a negotiation? Is it a clean CR in the end?
I think so, and your guess is as good as mine. I don't think Chuck Schumer knows, but we do know the ball is in his court. That all he has to agree is this simple extension, 24 pages, I think it is, for about 4 or 5 weeks as well, and then we can keep negotiating on all those other things. Those COVID subsidies we're talking about, those extra subsidies, won't expire till the end of the year. So let's talk about those. I think in the meantime we can get moving on that we can surely walk and chew gum at the same time.
Interesting. I have to ask you, since you're here, and you're probably the only physician I'm going to talk to this evening, the president's announcement today on drug prices with the CEO of Pfizer. Pretty remarkable moment. I don't know how you get drug prices or any price down 1,000%, as he said. But I'm curious what this means for the big pharma companies. You lower prices across the board. You hike R&D investment. How do you make money? And how do we keep research and development going under a scenario like that?
Yeah, and I've been having these private conversations with Big Pharma as well. I think they are sticking together, and they're trying to force these foreign countries to pay their share, so to speak. Really? 80% of their business, though, is in the United States. 80% of their income is from selling these drugs in the United States. I think that by working with Secretary Bessent, USTR, Secretary Greer as well, Ambassador Greer, that we're going to find some sweet spot to this. I know it's not simple. I do think if you want me to save Medicare, though, I need a drug for Alzheimer's. And we can't kill the golden goose here. We need pharma to keep innovating. So we're going to have to figure it out. And I think there'll be some headwinds, and we'll have to change our way as we go into the wind.
Maybe a government stake in one of these big pharma companies like we've seen in other industries, or is that a bridge too far?
I'm not, as you can tell, I'm kind of stumbling on myself on that one. I would have to measure that one twice and cut once. Let's think about that one.
Very good. Come talk to us again soon so we can figure out how to reopen the government, I think, is the next phase.
That's our goal. That's our goal.
It's great to see you.
Keep it open, balanced budget.
I appreciate that very much. It's good to see you.
Thank you.
Senator Roger Marshall of Kansas. A great conversation, Tyler, and we've got a lot more where that came from. Back to you.
Really a great conversation, Joe, and spanning more than just the potential government shutdown. Also asking about that announcement earlier today from President Trump with Pfizer, appearing to perhaps catch the senator there about a potential government stake when it comes to the industry. We're going to have a whole lot more on this special edition of Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. Coming up, we'll hear from the other side of the aisle, Democratic Senator Chris Coons. He's going to join Joe live from Capitol Hill up ahead. Stick with us. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. This is Balance Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. Senate Majority Leader John Thune spoke on the Senate floor earlier today, where he put the responsibility for any potential shutdown squarely on Democrats.
I had hoped that yesterday's White House meeting might mean that Democrats are starting to rethink their plans to shut down the government. But it seems that their leadership, at least, is full speed ahead. Republicans, Mr. President, House, Senate, and White House are united in our commitment to fund the government through a clean, nonpartisan funding resolution, and then to get back to the business of bipartisan appropriations.
And tonight, our analysts at Bloomberg Economics say that if a potential shutdown lasts at least 3 weeks, the surge in furloughed government workers could push the unemployment rate to 4.7%. Most of the gain would likely vanish as the government reopens, but with the White House threatening permanent dismissals of federal employees, there could be longer-term impacts. Here with analysis beyond Capitol Hill is Kitty Richards. She joins me now in D.C., senior fellow at the Groundwork Collaborative and former director of the state and local fiscal recovery funds at the U.S. Treasury Department under the Biden administration. Kitty, thanks so much for being here. And I want to start by pulling a little bit more from our analysts at Bloomberg Economics. They say that if a potential shutdown is resolved by mid-November, we're not going to see any impacts when it comes to fourth quarter growth. Can you put into context for us, is there a buffer timeline when it comes to the potential economic impacts, particularly when we are thinking about the labor market, for example?
I think when we're thinking about the labor market and the shutdown, it's important to zoom back and think about the bigger picture. One thing that I wanted to really emphasize is there have been a lot of claims that President Trump is going to use a shutdown as an excuse to fire additional federal workers. He does not have any more legal authority to fire workers than he does absent a shutdown, and in fact would be breaking with OPM precedent and prior legal rulings in executing further reductions in force. He has already fired hundreds of thousands of federal workers, and we're anticipating seeing that show up not in this week's Bureau of Labor Statistics report, but in the following one. That is an example of a Trump administration policy that's going to start dragging on the labor market pretty heavily, but we haven't seen it flow through yet. With respect to the government shutdown, furloughed workers historically receive back pay when the government reopens. There are going to be real costs to people who receive services from these workers. It's going to be really difficult for their families, and there are often knock-on costs in, national parks, concessions, purveyors not making money over the period of a shutdown. But I do think it's important to also keep in mind the greater stakes. Democrats are currently insisting that Republicans come to the table to talk about solving a health care crisis that is looming very quickly, thanks to a deadline imposed in the Big Beautiful Bill Act over the summer. We are going to start to see Obamacare exchange premiums rise by hundreds of dollars for families across the country, beginning when open enrollment begins on November 1st. And this isn't something where we can kick the can down the road or trust the assurances that we've recently heard that Republicans are not interested in negotiating now, but will be interested in negotiating tomorrow or the next day. So I think in thinking about the economic impacts, healthcare has been a huge source of job growth. In fact, it's been responsible for about half of the jobs created this year. And those cuts are going to have real economic repercussions.
All right, a lot for us to follow here when it comes to the potential economic impacts. Kitty Richards, senior fellow at the Groundwork Collaborative, thank you so much for joining us today. We'll head back now to Joe Matthew on Capitol Hill.
All right, Tyler, thank you so much joining us now. Democratic Senator Chris Coons of Delaware, a member of the Appropriations Committee, a member of the Democratic leadership. It's great to see you. Welcome back to Bloomberg TV and radio. We're up here for a reason, and it doesn't seem to be a good one. Nope. I'm assuming that you see a shutdown as inevitable here. We've just spoken with two Republicans, a senator and a congressman, who say it's not true what Democrats say, that they were negotiating all along, that Susan Collins gave you a free airing. Is that true?
Susan Collins gave us a what?
That she, in fact, gave you an opportunity to negotiate? And he says that this is Democrats' fault. I just want to hear what the response is from your side of the aisle.
I'm not sure what they're referring to. As an appropriator, I appreciate and respect the leaders of the Appropriations Committee who have worked very well together, Senator Murray, Senator Collins. On the committee, we managed to vote out several really big bills that I would like to see us take up and pass. One of them reverses Trump's disastrous cuts to health care through the NIH and CDC, tens of billions of dollars that would be restored for things like childhood cancer research or HIV/AIDS research. I'd love to see that pass. As an appropriator, I want to see us make progress by keeping the government open and continuing to put appropriations bills on the floor. the larger issue that Democrats are fighting for in this conversation tonight is to try and slow or reverse the harm to every American's health care by Republican decisions. So health care and insurance rates are going to go up dramatically starting tomorrow because of something the Republicans did in the big, beautiful bill that is going to jack up insurance rates.
Is it tomorrow or at the end of the year? Just to understand.
So insurance rates are going to come out starting tomorrow. The Affordable Care Act subsidies expire December 30, but insurers begin to tell people what the rate increases will be starting in October.
People will wake up to
people
headlines.
have to lock into them in November, and then legally it has impact first of next year.
Because Republicans have frequently said this is a policy issue for the end of the year.
No.
We've got weeks more to work this out. Democrats are simply trying to attach things to a clean CR.
No. So if you talk to anyone who's a former governor in the Senate, and I've talked to several, who really understands how health insurance works and the federal-state interaction, lots of decisions by the Trump administration have harmed Americans' health care. This is one of them. Technically, it takes effect December 30, but health insurance markets are going to begin to price that in next month. So they've cut tens of billions of dollars out of NIH and CDC. They've raised prescription drug prices through tariffs, and now they're going to be raising insurance costs through this effort. Democrats are trying to get to a provision that'll reduce or reverse those cuts.
Understood. 1201 comes, and then what? We've had a lot of Democrats come on the air and say, you know, we're concerned about shutting things down without a plan to reopen it. And it's been suggested that Donald Trump could get another record when it comes to the length of a shutdown here. Is that how you see it?
I hope not, but the last president who presided over a shutdown was Donald Trump. He shut down the government in order to try and force building a wall. 35 days later, he came back to Congress and said, okay, we should talk about what we can do together. I suspect he'll learn the same lesson this time. President Trump and the Republicans control the Congress and the White House. They're going to own the impact of a shutdown. My hope is it's not that long. When President Biden was in the White House and we had the majority in one or two chambers of Congress, there were no shutdowns because we negotiated our way through it. If we have a shutdown now, as President Trump has often said in the past, it's principally the responsibility of the president.
He said some good could come from a shutdown, and we know that he said that today, yes, and we know that there's a memo from Russ Vought pointing to some pretty heavy-duty federal worker layoffs. Is that going to be the story tomorrow? Do you take them at their word, or is this another bargaining chip or negotiating?
They've been illegally laying off thousands and thousands of federal workers throughout the administration. So I take him at his word that Russ Vought wants to continue to break the law.
This could make the Doge look like nothing, though, right?
Absolutely. And so should we give in to those threats? Should we believe that he'll stop laying off the federal workforce? Is it a threat, or is that
what they prefer? Maybe the president
I think it's
wants
what they
to
prefer. Absolutely.
Okay, so then there's no negotiation in that world.
Well, notice there was no negotiating until yesterday when there was the first meeting ever between President Trump and the Democratic leadership. It didn't make any progress. I don't think Russ Vought wants the Democrats in the appropriation process. He has said publicly, appropriations is too bipartisan. Well, yes, that's the point. Our framers wrote a constitution where Congress has the power of the purse. President Trump and his OMB director, Russ Vought, want to write us out of that. Constitutions are sticky things.
Well,
and I think they'll discover that we're willing to stand up to them in order to have room to negotiate going forward.
At least one of your colleagues, in John Fetterman, is voting yes, apparently on a clean CR. There have been thoughts that maybe your colleagues from states like Virginia and Maryland, with large populations of federal workers, might come over as well. If they all got on board, you'd pretty much have this passed. Could that happen?
It might. I don't expect it to tonight.
Or Democrats unified on this, with the exception of, I guess, the gentleman from Pennsylvania?
From the lunchtime conversation we had today, we are united in fighting for health care for Americans, in demanding that there be some reversal of the damage that the health care cuts have caused this year, and that we have a path forward towards working together on reducing the rising costs of health care in America.
You need to go vote.
I do.
It's the Democratic CRs up first, right?
I'm going to vote for it.
All right. I appreciate your being with us, Senator.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us on a very busy evening. Senator Chris Coons of Delaware, we thank you. Tyler, back to you. Coming up.
Well, coming up, how how this potential shutdown could stack up against previous ones, and will a threat of permanent firings follow through? We'll have more on the political fallout here in Washington. That's up ahead. Stick with us. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. We still have a lot more coming up from Capitol Hill, but first, let's go over all the political headlines coming out of this impending government shutdown with tonight's political panel. Democratic strategist Archie Siddiqui, founder and CEO of Bellwether Government Affairs, alongside Republican strategist Lisa Camuso-Miller, former communications director at the RNC. Archie, I'll start with you because the big question, of course, is who has more leverage in these negotiations? Who is ultimately going to blink first here if we do end up shutting down? Because Joe Matthew was on Capitol Hill speaking with members on both sides of the aisle, and it doesn't seem like anyone's budging.
Yeah, I think the stakes are really high, and I think the blame game has already started. There is a messaging war, I think, beginning. I think for Democrats, though, first and foremost, there is this really significant impending deadline, not at the end of the year on ACA subsidies, but very much that these premiums are being negotiated with plans. Folks are going to get letters, millions of Americans across the country who are already struggling with high costs. So I think at the heart of the Democratic message and position is that we need to do something on the high cost of living. And healthcare has been a big issue, as we've seen all summer on the Republican reconciliation bill.
And it's really come to the forefront of this discussion for funding the government. So, Lisa, what is your take here? Is there a future compromise on these expiring Obamacare tax credits? If not now, potentially down the road, how are you viewing this issue as a whole? Because at least some Republicans are saying, perhaps let's fund the government, but then we'll talk about it before the end of the year. How do you see this ultimately shaking out?
I think that's absolutely the disposition that Republicans are taking, and they feel very confident about the way they are and the way things are on the Hill. I think that if anything, all of my colleagues on the Republican side feel very good about where they are. They don't feel like they have to negotiate, and I think they're going to wait for the Democrats to come around on this.
All right, our political panel, Lisa Camuso-Miller and Archie Siddiqui. Stick with us. We're going to go now to Capitol Hill, where another senator has shown up to join Joe Matthew. Joe?
Another voice from the Republican side of the aisle, indeed, Tyler. Joining us now, Republican Senator Erik Schmitt of Missouri. It's great to have you with us on Bloomberg TV and Radio. I recall, as Attorney General in your state, you sued to have Obamacare invalidated. Mm-hmm. How do you feel on this night of nights that an extension of Obamacare subsidies appears to be the reason why the government shuts down?
Well, it just seems a misplaced timing of it all, right? I mean, clearly what Chuck Schumer, and you could roll the tape time and time again, what he's talked about is you don't tag other issues onto a government funding bill. So Republicans are doing that. We have a clean CR, and so Chuck Schumer has, and the Democrats writ large, have a choice here, which is to vote for a clean CR or to really inject partisan politics in a time right now. It's not to say we shouldn't have that debate. I'm all for having debate on that. We should do the NDAA. There's a lot of things we need to do, but you don't hold government funding hostage. And so a lot of things can get overcomplicated here in Washington. This one's quite simple. Yeah. You fund the government, and we continue to sort of have these other debates, but they're not interested in that.
Well, I know you're not going to be sitting here with us all evening because the voting on the Democratic continuing resolution, the Democratic version, just began, in fact, and you're, I know, going to leave us to go vote on that. Obviously, you're a no. What would happen if these subsidies expired at the end of the year to people in your state? Is that something that you're prepared to see happen?
Well, I think there's a few things. Let's be clear what we're actually voting on right now.
Of course.
We're voting on a Democrat proposal that would inject $1.4 trillion worth of new spending. It would reverse the rescissions package that I actually handled on the Senate floor. That's so it would fund NPR. It would, go to Guatemalan sex changes, all of the sort of USAID ridiculous spending that we rescinded. So they want to do that and a whole lot more. So it's not even reasonable. But I also think, Joe, the other thing that's happening that's less reported, this is really about the politics within the Democrat base right now. There's a reason why Chuck Schumer is afraid of his own shadow. He's afraid that AOC is going to run against him in a primary.
So this all goes back to March.
Absolutely. He got a lot of heat.
Did the shutdown start in March?
Yes, and in fact, Chuck Schumer has been planning for weeks in a war room with left-leaning organizations for this very moment, because he knew very well he wasn't going to capitulate again, because the party right now doesn't have a leader, it doesn't have a message. All they know is to fight Trump. And that's what you're seeing. So this is, again, there's plenty of places to do that, but a government funding bill that's clean isn't the place to do it.
Understood. There's polling, I think it was from Tony Fabrizio's shop, that showed the extension, or the expiration rather, without extending Obamacare subsidies, could be a real challenge for Republicans in the midterm elections. Do you think that that's true, and what do you do about it?
Well, there's a lot of debate. There's reform that could happen there, too. There's a lot of abuse, up to 40% of the abuse. During COVID, they juiced this thing up. They took the 400% of federal poverty level cap off, which that's part of that debate. But I also point to polling that came out today from the New York Times, not considered right-leaning, that a majority of Democrats don't think the Democrats should shut down the government for these demands. And so, of course, that number is much higher among Republicans. So I think that the Democrats are going down a very dangerous road here. There's no way around it. They're going to own it. Republicans are willing to vote for a clean CR. President Trump's going to sign it. The only reason that won't happen is that you won't have 10 Democrats willing to do the same.
Is there no way around it? I keep hearing Schumer shutdown, but it is Republicans who control both sides of Congress and the White House.
That's if you don't understand the filibuster, and you need 60 votes, right? If it was just a simple majority, absolutely.
Sure.
In the Senate,
well, margins are tighter. Majorities are tighter around here.
Right, and we could, like we did with the One Big Beautiful Bill and the rescissions package, we were able to pass that with a majority. But we have something called the legislative filibuster that requires 60 votes. Now, the Democrats are on record. They want to obliterate. If they're ever in the position that we're in right now, of having control of the House, Senate, and White House.
To eliminate the filibuster?
They'll eliminate the filibuster.
Some of them do. But doesn't a thin majority mean that you should be more... Well, Chuck Schumer, sure, but I mean the entire body.
No, but let me just finish that thought. They're all on record. Every Democrat that's serving, that was serving a couple years ago, voted to eliminate the legislative filibuster. Okay, so that means adding states to the union, means packing the Supreme Court. Their agenda would be radical, and I think what you're seeing right now is that base that's gotten more sort of radicalized in recent years is now telling the Democrats you can't cooperate with Trump, even if it means closing down the government.
Missouri has 37,000 federal workers. Do you take the administration at its word that mass layoffs are coming starting tomorrow?
Well, if Chuck Schumer decides that the government's not going to have money to pay its bills, they're going to have to make difficult decisions. And that's going to be part of the repercussions of shutting the government down. I don't want to see that happen. I'm going to vote to keep the government open. The Democrats are going to be voting to shut it down, and there will be consequences, no doubt. Now, Social Security checks are still going to be out. Medicare, Medicaid payments will still be out. The military is still going to function. They're going to get paid. But there could be some programs, in particular, the Democrats really like that could be affected.
Majorities are thin, obviously. We've established that in both the House and the Senate. Shouldn't that compel the majority to be more willing to negotiate in a time like this? I keep hearing from Democrats that they haven't been invited to negotiate, that this has been a one-sided affair. We certainly saw that with reconciliation. Why not put everybody in a room and hammer it out?
Well, let's just take 2013 as an example. When Republicans were in the minority, what they wanted to do was repeal Obamacare in exchange for government funding. Okay, the way out of that was Republicans relented and you had a clean CR. So the clean CR is the mechanism to get out of a government shutdown, and that's exactly what the Democrats are voting against.
So you're a no on the first, you're a yes on the second, which is the Republican CR that already failed in the Senate. Once this is shut down, how do you get it back open?
I think that
you're going to vote every day on this.
My hope is that enough Democrats that are not running again, or at least moderate, will cobble together 10 votes to go do it. I don't expect Chuck Schumer as the Democrat leader to ever vote for this, and that's a sad state of affairs.
Yeah. With that said, will you be talking to your Democratic colleagues? You guys go out to dinner and say, hey, can we get a small number together here to make it work?
Look, we have conversations all the time, but the truth is you can't attach these sorts of big partisan policy initiatives to a government funding bill. The Democrats have been warning against that for years, and here they go now because, quite frankly, they haven't accepted the results of the last year's election. They can't believe Trump's back in power, and their base wants them, I guess, to fight at every turn, and this is just the wrong place to do it.
How long can you go?
I don't know. I guess we're going to find out.
I mean, it was a record last time in 2018, 35 days. Where would we be 35 days from now?
Well, let me just say that this whole thing is stupid. Like, we shouldn't have this constant drama.
It's pretty wild when you can see it coming from this far off, and it's still going to happen.
I totally agree, and that's why, Ron Johnson, senator from Wisconsin, has this Preventing Government Shutdowns Act.
We talked to him last evening about it.
And that's a good idea.
Would you support that?
Yes, I've already voted for it.
Okay, that's fascinating, because the critics would say there's no incentive to make a deal, that we'd be in perpetual CRs. Do you disagree?
I don't believe that. I think that legislators want to have their impact on appropriations bills. I mean, one of the reasons why I'm supporting this, it gives us time to continue to work on individual appropriations bills. If Democrats want to have something to work on. That's it. You need 60 votes for individual appropriations bills, right? So that's why, again, this CR, it's a clean CR. It gives us time to finish that appropriations process, which I believe and can be bipartisan. Yep. But the Democrats want to shut all that down. And again, I think that's really irrational.
So the CR that you're about to vote yes on would bring us to November 21st.
Right.
Does that allow enough time to, God forbid I use the term regular order, to actually fund the government for the rest of this fiscal year?
That's my hope. That's what I want to see happen. But again, I think this constant drama, maybe it's good for ratings, I don't know, but it's terrible for the country. It's no way to run a railroad. So I just don't think we should be in this place where you have this cliff and people, again, are holding these sorts of hostages when there's a better way to do it.
Then you have to tell potentially men and women who are serving overseas that their paycheck's not going to.
I don't think that's going to happen, but there are going to be a lot of.
Tell us who will be protected. You can cover the Pentagon, air traffic control. What else?
Yes, I think the frontward-facing services for our constituents, Social Security, all those sorts of things that people rely on, that's not going to be affected. But there are going to be layoffs. There's no doubt about it. And but again, all that can be avoided over something that the Democrats have advised that we should do time and time again, which is a clean CR.
Understood. It's great to have you with us, and I appreciate that. We'll let you go vote, Senator. Thank you for being part of our special coverage here on Capitol Hill. That, of course, is Senator Erik Schmitt of Missouri. Tyler, we're counting down to 12:01.
We're getting closer, Joe, and a great interview there. We're going to bring back, though, our panel tonight. Democratic strategist Arshie Siddiqui, founder and CEO of Bellwether Government Affairs, alongside Republican strategist Lisa Camuser-Miller and former communications director of the RNC. Just for final quick thoughts, Lisa, I'll start with you, because in that interview, we heard the senator talk about potential economic impacts. We know extending those Obamacare tax credits could cost $350 billion over 10 years. Is this going to turn into messaging about the economy, or are we squarely focused on health care going forward?
No, I think the two are inextricably linked, no doubt about it. I mean, I think that the Republicans have a lot of questions to answer about health care. I think the economy is continuing to be the biggest issue that we're going to talk about in midterms, so no question about it. I think we're right on the right side of the messaging, but I do think the two are together in this.
And very quickly, Arshie, is this just inevitable at this point? Are we shutting down tonight?
Normally, I would say these final hours can open very locked doors and unlock them quickly, but this feels different. And I think the outlook is grim, unfortunately. If you look at yesterday, that was the first time all the major players actually even met, let alone negotiate. So we've been having a lot of negotiation via the press, and that has led us to today.
All right, our political panel tonight, Arshie Siddiqui and Lisa Camuser-Miller. We thank you so much for being with us on really this important day. We're going to continue to monitor this and continue our special coverage. We go to Joe now on Capitol Hill.
Yeah, Tyler, we're counting down, obviously, to 12:01 here, and we're going to continue talking with lawmakers as they make their way from the vote. This is Bloomberg.